live chats and chatbots can really encourage users to, rather than wait and get frustrated about an issue and then eventually just cancel subscriptions or leave because they don't have anywhere to go, they don't feel like they have somebody that they can access to get support. If they know that they can just jump on the website, get into a chat, and get their questions answered, it does provide a lot more interactive conversation.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host Chandni, and we're really glad to have all of you join us today. On this show, we talk to CX and tech experts from around the world. We explore, uncover, and share fresh insights on creating experiences that your customers will remember and look forward to. Engati is the world's leading multilingual, no-code digital CX platform available across 14 channels with 45,000 solutions created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc. magazine, Tech World, CIO magazine, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest, Elise Marengo is the head of customer success at Userpilot. She has been in the teaching industry and now stepping into the customer success network. One of her biggest goals has been ensuring that no matter what, our customers feel supported, regardless of how many companies we have in our portfolios, each feels like they are the only one. While this sometimes appears to be an impossible feat, she believes with some strategy and patience, it can be done. Elise trusts that only one thing remains constant, be it at school or business, is that education. Welcome to the show, Elise.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. But before we dive into our interview with Elise, don't forget to subscribe to Engati and tap on the bell icon below to get access to exclusive content from thought leaders around the globe. So, moving right ahead to the questions, Elise, what are some examples of the opportunities that help optimize employee experience in the times of crisis? And do these opportunities impact customer experience as well?
That's a great question. I think first, it's important to recognize that absolutely employee experience is the foundation of the rest of the company, like outwardly. So if the company's employees are engaged and having good positive experiences within the company itself, then they can go outwardly and engage positively with the customers and kind of build that brand together. And I think in times of crisis, this is really put to the test. I think it's super important to recognize that everybody deals with crises in different ways. And so providing lots of different ways for your employees to feel supported during times of crisis is really important. At Userpilot, we've tried to really boost morale with a variety of different things, trying to make sure that the employees have an experience, even though we are a primarily remote company, where they feel engaged and supported and respected. And so we offer, group yoga sessions on Zoom, or have like photo challenges where we're submitting things from our day-to-day lives to just kind of continue to maintain that level of connection and just feel like even though we might be thousands of miles apart, we do have a network around us of other employees that can support them should they need additional, just additional support or morale boosts from time to time. We're not just colleagues. I think it's important to have that kind of relationship as well.
Absolutely. And moving to my second part of the question, does it affect customer experience at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if the employees don't feel like they are engaged at their work and have relationships with the rest of their team, that directly impacts the relationships that they can then have with their customers. If if two employees, even from, let's say, different departments, don't communicate well with each other, don't feel like they have positive experiences, then when they need to, like in my role, I have to advocate for the customer in a lot of moments. And so to go back and mirror that for my team, if I didn't feel supported or engaged, it would be a lot harder. And so I think there's a through line all the way from the customer experience to the employee experience.
Absolutely. And do you think that a good employee can be a really good advertising for a company?
Oh, absolutely. I think not only are happy employees the ones that are shouting from the rooftops, right? We talk about the evangelists that are usually seen as the customers, right? That they're the ones that are shouting from the rooftops about companies. However, I think employees, the happiest employees, talk positively about their companies. And I know when I look for brands that I want to support, I like to see that their employees also like to shout it from the rooftops and are proud of the company that they work for sure.
Absolutely. So, moving on to my next question, is the relationship between employee experience and customer experience interdependent? And are there any rules that businesses should abide by when developing a strategy that guarantees a good customer experience?
Absolutely. I think that be it with customer engagement or employee to employee engagement, really one of the most foundational expectations should be like levels of respect, right? If we are not speaking to our colleagues with a level of mutual respect, then it's very difficult to translate that into not speaking to your customers with a level of mutual respect. And I think that oftentimes that comes through, especially in stressful times. If a customer comes to you really frustrated, being able to treat them with respect and with patience, that comes from knowing that your team also speaks to you with respect and patience. And so I think that really those two things work together. If you're already in a really high stress environment where you don't communicate well with your colleagues, how can you turn that off and then go to customers with compassion and kindness? And so, that turmoil that takes place in employee to employee interactions will automatically translate, and then vice versa. So then if maybe there is a moment where you're really stressed because a customer is putting a lot of pressure on you, and you go back and you maybe are frustrated and speak to your team, they recognize that, like, okay, something really stressful must be going on. How can I react in a positive and supportive way to my colleague? And so really having those respectful, compassionate, empathetic conversations, I think both go hand in hand and they are really interdependent.
Absolutely. And are there any rules that these businesses should abide by when developing a strategy that guarantees a good customer experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Setting up those pillars, kind of the main things that we just discussed with, pillars of respect, empathy, patience, all of those main pillars should be on both sides, not just in customer experience, but also in employer relations and experience too. So those things should be part of the core values of a company, regardless of if they're dealing with a customer or if they're dealing with a colleague. I think that both need to be there. The last thing you would want is, like, you can treat your colleagues however you want, but the employees get the good face. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It should be core values of a company, regardless of who you're speaking to or who you're interacting with.
Absolutely. And can you name a few points for our audience on, rules for a good customer experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that any customer looks for when they're engaging with anybody, especially in service or support, is good listening skills, right? Being a good communicator isn't necessarily how well you speak to people, but instead how well you listen, because you want to hear the questions that they have and actually understand that they're coming to you with a need, and you need to be able to listen to the entire problem so that then you can respond appropriately. I think also having a lot of patience and recognizing that oftentimes we are there, they've been working on a problem for a long time, and then they finally get to you because they've hit a wall and they're frustrated. And so just being patient and empathetic with that customer, and speaking to them either by email, by chat, by phone, by Zoom, with as much courtesy and kindness as possible. And then also being reactive and being able to give answers in the most time efficient way. That doesn't necessarily mean, spouting out the first answer that comes to mind, but being communicative and saying, actually, this is something that I'm going to have to look into. Thank you for your patience. I'll be back to you as soon as I have an answer. That kind of response, people appreciate, like, okay, I'm being heard. They're going to look into this and then get back to me. So I think kind of uniting all of those things will really benefit both the customer itself, but then also the rest of the team, because they know that you're doing everything you can to support your customers.
Absolutely. I mean, those are some really, really important points out there that everybody can put into action, no matter what industry they come from, right? I mean, for everybody, customer experience points that you put out are, they can work for anybody, anyone, and anywhere.
Sure.
That's really great. Uh, so moving on to my next question, what are the biggest customer success challenges faced by customer success managers in 2020?
2020 was a crazy year, right? But I think that what's made customer success kind of a growing field in 2020 is because people were recognizing that they needed to be able to access technologies and understand technologies in a much faster way, right? They were suddenly, from basically one night to the next, forced into new expectations and new, like, trying to do your same job, but in a totally new way. And that's really customer success is about, making sure that, shockingly, customers are successful. And so that requires that you're there to support your customers based on and trying to help them problem solve and understand that maybe they're trying to answer the same question that they've answered for 30 years, but now the way that you answer it is in a totally new way. And so giving them the tools to get through that process. And it goes back to initial pillars, right? Listening to customers, understanding that many people are uncomfortable with this big change, and being patient with them in this process. So I think that great challenges are helping answer new questions, sometimes old questions in new ways, and making sure that all of your different customers, regardless of their tech savvy or their understanding in some of the industries that we're in, are all being answered in a full kind of robust way. So making sure that you're good at communicating maybe the same information that you've communicated before, but in lots of different ways, in different shapes and different forms, so that you have an audience, regardless, that can understand.
Absolutely. And as you spoke about, going digital overnight. So do you think digital transformation was a boon or a bane throughout the whole lockdown and COVID situation?
I think it's a combination of both positive and negative things. I think, of course, the initial shock is really stressful. And I do have to say that I don't think that some things that have gone digital are here to stay necessarily. I think that some things definitely are, but I think that there are things that are, best communicated in person, and there are things that will need to go back to real life. However, I do think that one of the digital transformation, will say, one of the positive things is it was really nice to kind of see people where they are, and that transition of recognizing that people have real lives. And so Zoom meetings went to people's homes, and there was in the beginning there was a little bit of shock as I'm so sorry, my doorbell rang, I have to run out. And it's well, that's life, that's empathy, that's regular, that's how humans typically would be. And so it reminded us of the humanity of it all, right? And so I think that the transition from offices and that kind of sterilized culture into this is day-to-day life, while it was digital and hard, and you're on your computer all the time, I still felt like I was actually kind of engaging with people almost in a more intimate way than I had before, which was really strange. It was digital, but a little bit closer, in kind of a juxtapositioned way.
That's really well put out, Elise. So, are there any digital tools that enhance customer success?
Absolutely. I think customer success wouldn't be nearly as successful. Obviously, I work for a company that's customer success is entirely remote. So video tools like this, I think seeing people and explaining things, I don't know if you've noticed, but I talk with my hands like crazy. And I think that's part of the way that I communicate. And so, video tools like Zoom, Meet, things like that, but then also like video recording tools so that you can answer a question in a more dynamic way, because sometimes having everything written out in an email for some customers is exactly what they need. They need a step-by-step list of how they need to go through a process, but other people learn better by seeing a process. And so having a video where you can talk them through it or watch through it or do it with them, those kinds of things are really helpful. The webinar resources and tools that are out there, all kinds of technical tools are really, really beneficial. And then of course, that chat supports where you can get an answer in the moment, like Engati, these kinds of tools where a customer can go in the moment, ask a question, and then hopefully start not just getting a quick answers, but also building a relationship with that company, where then they know whenever they have a question, they have multiple tools and ways to get in touch with other, the people that are working to make sure that they have the best support possible.
Absolutely. So do you think these, as you mentioned, chatbots and live chat are effective in terms of building relationships with customers?
I think when employed correctly, they absolutely can. I think the mistake that oftentimes we think about with chatbots is that like just get in, get an answer, get out kind of processy, which for some instances is super great, just because we don't. I don't want to have a 45-minute interaction with a bot just for one simple answer. I just want to know exactly what I can do. But in other instances, I think that these kinds of live chats and chatbots can really encourage users to, rather than wait and get frustrated about an issue and then eventually just cancel subscriptions or leave because they don't have anywhere to go, they don't feel like they have somebody that they can access to get support. If they know that they can just jump on the website, get into a chat, and get their questions answered, it does provide a lot more interactive conversations, and I would like to hope that most chatbots are eventually connected to a person. So should that bot not be able to answer the question, then they can be connected to a person that can hopefully give them the kinds of answers that they need, especially for situations that are not just yes or no numbers, but qualitative responses that explain best practices and creative solutions, those kinds of things that maybe AI can't answer, but a person can. That the transition between the bot to the person is seamless and very clear. I think that's when you get the best interaction between customers and computers.
That's a really great answer, Elise. So, before we wrap up the interview, are there any other sound bites that you would like to leave our audience with?
I think that mostly I really enjoy interviews where they remind us of the simple things that people can do just to get the most out of interactions with customers, and or like we were talking about initially with other colleagues. And I think that it goes right back to that initial question where what are the values and what are the things that we want to construct our companies on. And I think recognizing those for yourself, maybe one day just writing what are your 3 core values that you look to provide for the people that you're working with as a colleague, and then what are the things that, how do they also reflect in the way that you interact with your customers, and really finding ways to align those, and then constantly checking back in and recognizing that are the interactions that I'm having on a day-to-day basis reflective of those pillars, and if not, how can I adjust them to make sure that they are. And I think that in the long term is going to set you up for the kind of work that makes you feel good about what you do every day, and so take some time to think about the values that you want to impart into the world, and then also want to be a part of.
That's really great, Elise. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Your insights are really valuable, and I'm sure our audience is going to enjoy this interview.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So we'll be back with a new episode and a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned, and we'll see you around for the next one. Thank you.